Can a single letter shatter a dream so completely? Under the oppressive glare of the Arizona sun in 1883, Wilhelmina Dawson stood forsaken on the desolate train platform of Copper Creek, her heart sinking with every tick of the unseen clock. Clutched in her unsteady hand was a cruel missive of rejection. Her intended husband had glimpsed her from afar and turned away, branding her unworthy, too unassuming, too bold, for the image he'd conjured when summoning a bride from distant Boston. The weight of his dismissal pressed down heavier than the afternoon heat, leaving her stranded nearly 2,000 miles from the familiar embrace of home. Willa, as she liked to be called, fought the bitter sting in her throat. At just 23, with a mere $12 to her name, she stood beside her solitary trunk, a castaway in a foreign land. The merciless sun scorched her pale skin, a harsh departure from the gentle breezes of New England springs she'd abandoned for this dusty frontier. Her once pristine Navy traveling dress now sagged, marred by the grime and creases of a grueling 3-day journey. "What now?" she murmured to the empty air, tilting her bonnet against the blinding light, searching the barren depot for a sign, a solution, anything. The station master had retreated to his post with nothing but a fleeting look of pity and a muttered, "Happens sometimes." The distant hum of Copper Creek, a town that had already spurned her, offered no solace. Then a sudden clatter of boots on the weathered platform jolted her. Willa straightened, steeling herself. Never would she let them see her falter, even as her future disintegrated like sand through her fingers. "Madam, you waiting on someone?" The voice, rich and slow with a local drawl, cut through her thoughts. Turning, she met the gaze of a tall figure clad in worn range gear, a faded blue shirt beneath a rugged leather vest, denim trousers stuffed into battered boots. A wide-brimmed hat cast shadows over his face, but his presence loomed undeniable. As the conversation lingered from moments before, Willa's eyes traced the rugged features of the stranger before her, a chiseled jaw shadowed by a rough stubble, and eyes that mirrored the brooding gray of a sky just after a tempest. "No," she replied, her voice holding a firmness that belied the tremor in her heart. "It seems I've been cast aside." The man edged closer, and she couldn't help but notice the sun-carved creases framing his eyes, lines etched by time and trial. His gaze, piercing yet free of condemnation, studied her with an earnest curiosity. Though he couldn't have been past 30, his demeanor carried the weight of a life richly lived. "Are you the mail-order bride meant for James Walton?" he inquired, his voice even, betraying no hint of bias. A flush crept up Willa's cheeks as she nodded. "I was, but it appears Mr. Walton deemed me unworthy at first glance." He motioned toward the crumpled letter in her hand, a bitter emblem of rejection. "He's secured my passage back east on tomorrow's train, though I'm not sure I can face returning to a family who made it plain they couldn't bear another burden." The man tipped off his hat, revealing a crop of hair like polished copper, short yet rebelliously tousled. "I'm Lucas Reed," he introduced himself. "I manage the Double Ranch, just 5 miles from here." His eyes flicked to her weathered trunk before returning to her face. "If I may ask, what fault did Walton find in you? You strike me as more than adequate." A sharp, mirthless laugh escaped Willa's lips. "According to his note, I'm overeducated for a wife and far too contentious. Imagine. Questioning the sense in leaving me stranded at the station for 3 hours was proof of an unfit nature." Lucas's lips twitched, perhaps in a fleeting smile. "Walton's a fool," he declared with quiet conviction. After a thoughtful pause, he nodded toward her trunk. "Miss Wilhelmina Dawson Willa, if I may. Miss Dawson, I've got a wagon waiting outside. I could drive you to the boarding house in town if you're inclined." As there, I'm thrilled to help craft an engaging and emotional narrative for this section. Below is the rewritten text, expanded to approximately 309 words with vivid language and varied sentence structures to evoke a heartfelt tone. I've ensured a smooth transition from the previous section, assuming a context of Willa's journey and uncertainty, maintained the core meaning, and avoided repetition. The tone is formal yet passionate, with expressive exclamations and a thought-provoking question to heighten engagement. As the weight of indecision pressed upon her, Willa lingered in the fading light, her mind wrestling with the choice before her. Should she accept Lucas's offer, secure a roof over her head for the night, and reassess her shattered plans? Logic urged her to comply, yet logic had long betrayed her. It hadn't shielded her from her family's cold decision to bind her to a stranger, nor had it softened the sting of rejection upon her weary arrival. Before she could muster a reply, the station master's voice pierced the tense air, striding out from the depot with news that struck like a thunderclap. "Train from Tuckson's rolling in early tomorrow, Miss Dawson, 9 o'clock sharp. Mr. Walton's already settled your return fare." His uneasy glance darted between her and Lucas, as if sensing the storm brewing within her. Something fierce ignited in Willa's chest. Had she not crossed an entire continent for a fresh dawn, enduring cramped quarters and meager meals, abandoning all she knew, only to be cast aside without a word of welcome? No more. "Thank you, Mr. Reed," she declared, her voice steady with newfound resolve. "I'd be grateful for a ride to the boarding house." Lucas gave a curt nod, stooping to grasp her trunk's worn handle. As he hefted it, his eyes flicked to the station master. "John, if anyone inquires, my wife will be at the Double R from now on." Willa's breath snagged in her throat. "Wife? I beg your pardon?" she gasped, meeting his inscrutable gaze. "Just laying out a path, Miss Dawson," Lucas murmured, his tone a quiet enigma. "That train awaits tomorrow, if you choose it, or we could forge a different bond. I need a housekeeper, you need shelter. We'll speak of terms on the way to town." The station master coughed awkwardly. "You claiming her as your wife, Reed?" Lucas's eyes never wavered from hers. "Only if she consents." The earth seemed to tremble beneath Willa's feet. How could she even consider such a notion, having just met this man, after weeks of journeying to wed another? "I hope this resonates with the emotional depth and engagement you're seeking. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. A man you've never laid eyes on," he reasoned with a calm, measured tone. "With me, at least, there's no mystery. You'll get hard work, fair dealings, and no hidden traps." It was utter folly, sheer recklessness to entertain such a proposition from a stranger. Yet what other paths lay before her? As far as for her, should she slink back to Boston, cloaked in disgrace, or attempt to carve out a life alone in a wild, untamed land that showed no mercy to the unprepared? What would this peculiar pact truly demand of her? "What exactly does this arrangement involve?" she pressed, brushing aside the station master's incredulous stare. Lucas lowered her trunk to the ground with a thud. "My ranch needs care," he began. "I require meals prepared, clothes patched, and a home kept in order. In return, you'll have shelter, sustenance, and my unwavering protection." He hesitated, his voice softening. "Anything beyond that rests solely in your hands." "I'm not here to impose or demand." Willa scrutinized him, her gaze piercing into those storm-blue eyes, hunting for traces of deceit or malice. Yet all she found was raw, unvarnished honesty. He offered no whispers of love, no tender assurances, just the stark promise of survival, her honor untouched. "And if I choose to leave someday?" she inquired, her words cautious, testing. "Then I'll drive you to this very station myself," he replied, a faint, uneven smile tugging at his lips. "Though I'd hope you'd grant the Double R a fair shot before making that call." The depot grew still, save for the mournful wail of a freight train fading into the distance. Willa's mind drifted to Boston, to the suffocating apartment above her father's tailoring shop, her mother's endless worries over every penny, her brother's bitter glares over shared scraps. She recalled James Walton's cold, curt letter, too cowardly to face her with his rejection. Then her eyes settled on Lucas Reed, a man extending not sweet nothings, but a stark, practical bargain. "Very well, Mr. Reed," she declared at last, her voice steady with resolve. "I accept your offer of employment." Following the delicate exchange of words, I felt it was crucial to uphold a sense of decorum and shared respect before any bold pronouncements could be made. Lucas's smile broadened just a touch, a flicker of admiration dancing in his gaze. "Fair enough," he murmured, his tone carrying a quiet resolve. With a nod to the station master, he hoisted my trunk once more onto his shoulder. "John, let it be known around town that Miss Dawson has secured a proper arrangement. We wouldn't want Walton reconsidering his stance." The station master gave a slow, thoughtful nod. "Of course, Reed. I'll spread the word that your wife has arrived safe and unharmed." Lucas took the lead as we stepped off the platform, my trunk resting effortlessly on his broad shoulder, while I trailed behind. my thoughts a whirlwind of the monumental decision I had just embraced. As we neared a rugged wagon tethered to two strong bay horses, a pang of doubt gripped me. Was I merely leaping from one uncertain path to another? Lucas carefully placed my trunk in the wagon's bed before extending a hand to assist me onto the elevated seat. His touch was rough with calluses, yet surprisingly warm, his grasp steady and reassuring without overpowering. "There's still time to reconsider," he said softly, his voice almost a whisper as I smoothed my skirts. "That train departs tomorrow." I gazed out at the dusty stretch of Copper Creek's Main Street, at the modest buildings huddled beneath an endless sky, framed by towering distant mountains. This wasn't the vision I had held, but perhaps that was a blessing in disguise. Hadn't my own expectations stranded me at that desolate depot? "No," I declared, a surge of resolve igniting within me. "I ventured west to forge a new beginning, and I will, even if it unfolds in ways I never foresaw." Lucas swung up beside me, grasping the reins with a practiced hand. "The double R isn't much to look at, but it's sturdy. I've poured 8 years into that land." With a gentle click to the horses, the wagon lurched forward, carrying us toward an unknown horizon. What awaited us there? Could it truly be the foundation of a life rebuilt? As the wagon jolted onward from the heart of Copper Creek, Willa sensed the weight of inquisitive stares trailing them. The town, though modest, hummed with life. A quaint general store, a weathered saloon, a humble church, a bank, and a handful of businesses flanked the dusty main street, with homes sprinkled in the background. Women halted mid-errand, their gazes lingering as the wagon creaked by, while men offered Lucas a courteous tip of their hats, their eyes narrowing with unspoken questions about the stranger by his side. "They'll whisper about us," Lucas remarked with a plain, untroubled tone. "In a place this small, gossip is their bread and butter." Willa's chin tilted upward, a flicker of defiance in her posture. "Let them weave their tales," she countered. "I'd sooner be their riddle than their charity case." Lucas cast her a sidelong glance, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "Walton must have been blind to let you go," he muttered, more to the wind than to her. Beyond the town, they traversed a rugged dirt path that twisted through a harsh, untamed landscape scrubby earth, studded with cacti and sparse clusters of mesquite. To Willa, it was a world apart from Boston's suffocating streets and looming brick facades. "It's breathtaking," she whispered, almost reverently, in its raw, untamed way. "How does one even begin to tame such a place?" Lucas gave a slow nod. "It's a hard land, unforgiving to the careless. But honor its ways, and it'll repay you tenfold." He steered the horses around a curve, and there, on the horizon, a scattering of structures emerged. "That's the double R," he announced. As they neared, Willa discerned a sturdy, unassuming house of hewn logs and stone, flanked by a sprawling barn, a corral, and a few rough outbuildings. It lacked the grandeur of a storybook ranch, yet it stood far prouder than the dilapidated hovel she'd dreaded. "Do you manage this all on your own?" she asked, a sudden curiosity stirring about the life she was stepping into. "Just me and Pedro Mendoza," Lucas replied. "He lends a hand with the ranch and bunks nearby." As the wagon drew near the weathered house, Lucas eased the reins, slowing the horses to a gentle trot. Times had been tougher in the past, especially after the merciless drought 2 years prior had stripped the ranch of its vitality. Back then, he'd had a full crew of hands, but hardship forced him to let most go. Now, slowly but surely, he was rebuilding. The wagon creaked to a halt before the modest home, and Lucas secured the brake with a firm hand before leaping down. Rounding the side, he offered his arm to assist Willa in stepping off, just as a lean, wiry Mexican man emerged from the shadowed barn, his face etched with the lines of hard-earned wisdom and curiosity. "Pedro!" Lucas called out with a warmth in his voice. "Come meet Miss Dawson. She'll be staying with us for a while." Pedro approached, wiping his calloused hands on a worn rag, his graying hair catching the faint sunlight. At perhaps 50, his dark, discerning eyes studied Willa with a quiet intensity before softening into a respectful nod. "Welcome to the Double R, señorita," he said, his voice carrying the weight of sincerity. "Thank you," Willa replied, extending her hand in a gesture of goodwill. Pedro hesitated for a heartbeat, caught off guard by her forwardness, but then grasped her hand with a faint, appreciative smile. "Pedro's been here since before I even laid claim to this land." Lucas remarked as he hefted Willa's trunk from the wagon. "He knows cattle better than anyone I've ever crossed paths with. A true master of his craft." "The boss flatters me," Pedro chuckled, shrugging modestly, though a flicker of pride danced in his eyes. "I'll tend to the new calf, then fetch water for the señorita." With that, he turned back toward the barn, his steps steady and purposeful. Lucas, meanwhile, carried Willa's trunk to the house, pausing at the covered porch with a trace of uncertainty in his demeanor, a rare crack in his usual resolve. "It's not much, not what you might be accustomed to," he cautioned, his tone tinged with quiet vulnerability. "It's been a long while since this place knew a woman's care." Willa squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze with unyielding determination. "Mr. Reed, I was raised in a cramped three-room apartment, shoulder to shoulder with 6 family members. I've learned to make do with whatever life offers. What is a house if not a place to build something new?" Lucas regarded her for a lingering moment, a flicker of respect in his eyes, before giving a subtle nod and pushing the door open. Inside, the space unfolded in humble simplicity, yet it carried a warmth Willa hadn't anticipated, a quiet comfort woven into its unassuming walls. As Willow stepped into the heart of the house, the room unfolded as a humble blend of parlor and dining space. At one end, a rugged stone fireplace stood as a silent guardian, while a sturdy table flanked by chairs anchored the other. Scattered between were a few pieces of practical furniture, worn yet reliable. The wooden floors, though swept bare of dust, bore no polish, their raw planks stretching beneath a solitary braided rug that offered the only whisper of comfort underfoot. Lucas, with a casual nod, pointed toward a shadowed doorway. "Kitchen's through there," he said, then motioned down a narrow hall. "2 bedrooms that way, mine's at the far end. The other's been a catch-all for odds and ends, but there's a bed. It's yours if you'll take it." Willow ventured deeper, her eyes tracing the sparse traces of life within these walls. A pair of weathered antlers hung proudly above the fireplace, a modest bookshelf cradled a mere 24 tomes, and a clock on the mantel ticked with unwavering resolve. This was a man's domain, built for function over warmth, yet she could envision its hidden promise. "It's more than enough," she admitted with genuine warmth. "Though I can't help but wonder why open your home to a stranger after so long on your own." Lucas lowered her trunk with a thud, doffing his hat once more. His hand raked through his hair, betraying a flicker of unease at such probing. "Been meaning to get help for the place," he said gruffly. "Ranch is picking up, and that means more work everywhere." He hesitated, then added, "And I didn't take kindly to Walton casting a woman aside like spoiled goods." A wave of gratitude tinged with exhaustion warmed Willow's chest. "That's noble of you, Mr. Reed, but I'm not seeking a savior, only a chance." His lips twitched into a faint grin. "Understood. And call me Lucas if you will. Mr. Reed makes me feel like I've crossed the schoolteacher." A soft smile broke through Willow's reserve. "Very well, Lucas. And I'm Willa, if it suits you." A heavy, uncertain quiet settled over them, punctuated only by Lucas clearing his throat, as if words themselves hesitated to bridge the gap. How strange, she thought, to stand on the threshold of a new beginning with a man whose kindness felt both foreign and familiar. As Lucas cleared his throat, a faint awkwardness hung in the air. "Come, I'll show you to your room. You can settle in before supper at 6. Nothing elaborate, just simple fare." He guided Willa down the narrow hallway, pausing at a door on the left. Beyond it lay a modest bedroom, its small window framing the rugged silhouette of distant mountains. A single bed, draped in a humble quilt, rested against one wall, while a weathered chest of drawers stood opposite. The remaining space brimmed with clutter, a worn trunk, scattered crates, and a saddle begging for repair. "I'll clear this mess tomorrow," Lucas vowed, placing her trunk gently at the bed's foot. "Haven't had cause to use this room in ages." Willa nodded with quiet resolve. "It's perfectly fine. I'll handle the rest myself." Lucas hesitated in the doorway as if wrestling with unspoken thoughts. Finally, he muttered, "Well, I'll leave you to it. Water pumps out back if you need to freshen up. Outhouse is about 50 yards behind the house. I've got chores to wrap up before sundown." Then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the hall. Alone, Willa sank onto the bed's edge, the weight of the day crashing over her like a relentless tide. Just this morning, she'd been a mail-order bride, her heart fluttering with anxious hope. And now, what was she? A housekeeper, a feigned wife, a stranger adrift in an untamed land where every face was unfamiliar. With trembling hands, she opened her trunk, unpacking her meager belongings. 3 spare dresses, undergarments, a nightgown, a shawl, and sturdy boots. Then came her true treasures, a handful of cherished books, her mother's silver hairbrush, and a daguerreotype of her family, captured 5 years ago. With care, she arranged each item, crafting a fragile sense of order in this alien space. By the time she'd finished and splashed cool water on her face, a quiet determination began to stir within her. How could she carve a life here in this wild, uncharted world? As the sun dipped low, casting a warm, golden glow over the western mountains, Willa scrubbed her hands at the outdoor pump, the cool water a sharp contrast to the day's lingering heat. The ranch transformed under this tender light, its harsh edges softened, as if extending an invitation to belong. From the corral, the low murmur of Lucas and Pedro's voices drifted through the crisp, clear air, a quiet harmony in the vast stillness. With a resolute heart, Willa strode toward the kitchen, eager to prove her worth from the very first moment. The space was unadorned yet practical, equipped with a sturdy cast-iron stove, a dry sink, shelves brimming with essentials, and a worn work table bearing the scars of countless meals. She surveyed the provisions with a keen eye. Sacks of flour, beans, a pinch of salt, slabs of pork, a tin of coffee, a handful of potatoes with sprouting eyes, onions dangling in a woven bag, and a few jars of preserved goods that looked more questionable than comforting. What stories lay hidden in these humble ingredients? Could she weave something nourishing from such simplicity? By the time Lucas and Pedro trudged in from their labor, weary boots scuffing the floor, Willa had conjured a modest feast of beans, salt pork, and cornbread, the aroma a quiet triumph over scarcity. It wasn't a grand spread, but it steamed with warmth and sustenance. Lucas halted in the doorway, his weathered face flickering with astonishment. "You didn't need to cook tonight. We could have given you a day to settle," he said, his tone gentle with concern. "I'd rather be of use," Willa countered, arranging plates on the table with care. "Though I must confess, the kitchen isn't my forte. I had hoped to learn from Mrs. Walton, but—" Her voice faded, a wistful shrug filling the silence. "Smells mighty fine to me," Lucas reassured, tipping off his hat and hanging it by the door. He and Pedro rinsed the day's grit from their hands at the basin she'd prepared, then settled at the table. They ate in near silence, the clink of forks punctuating sparse talk of ranch chores and the fickle weather. Willa watched them quietly, struck by the unspoken bond between the men, a mutual respect that needed no words. How rare, she thought, to see such ease between a man and his hired hand. Didn't it speak volumes of Lucas's character? As the meal concluded, Pedro slipped away to tend to the newborn calf one last time before retreating to the bunkhouse, leaving a quiet intimacy at the table. Lucas lingered, his eyes following Willa as she gathered the plates with a gentle clatter. After a moment of silence, he spoke, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to surprise even himself. "Thank you for the supper. It's been ages since I've come home to a hot meal waiting. It means more than I can say." Willa offered a small smile over her shoulder. "You're welcome. I'll improve with time, once I've mastered the quirks of your kitchen." She turned to the basin, scrubbing the dishes with methodical care. "I'd like to understand my responsibilities here, so I can manage my days well." "What do you expect of me?" Lucas eased back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. "The usual cooking, cleaning, mending. There's a garden out back, too, if you've a knack for it. I've tried growing vegetables, but they wither under my neglect. They need a kinder hand than mine." Willa gave a thoughtful nod, her hands still in the soapy water. "And my position here? You called me your wife at the station." Her tone held a question, not an accusation. Lucas chose his words with care. "That was to shield you. A woman alone with a man like me in a place like Copper Creek, it invites trouble. But within these walls, you're Miss Dawson, my housekeeper. Nothing more, unless you wish it to be." She appreciated his candor. "And if the townsfolk pry?" "Let them speculate," he replied, standing with a shrug. "Town's 5 miles off. We only go for supplies once or twice a month. Their tongues will tire of us soon enough." Willa's lips curved wryly. "I doubt that. Gossip about a woman's name clings like burrs." Lucas's face hardened, a fierce edge to his voice. "If anyone troubles you, I want to know. I won't stand for disrespect." The raw protectiveness in his words struck her like a sudden gust, unexpected and stirring. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice softer than she intended. He gave an awkward nod, then motioned toward the bookshelf in the adjoining room. Feel free to explore there if you've a mind to read. There's a bit of everything. As the echoes of the previous day's revelations lingered in the quiet house, Willa turned her attention to the humble bookshelf in the corner, a silent witness to years gone by. Lucas had mentioned offhandedly that he wasn't much for reading, but the prior owner had left behind a small collection. After tidying the kitchen, her curiosity drew her to the worn spines. Most of the books were utilitarian tomes on ranching, livestock care, and even a hefty medical compendium, their pages yellowed with use. Yet nestled among them, like a hidden treasure, was a tattered copy of Pride and Prejudice. Her heart lifted at the sight. Oh, what a delight to find a familiar friend in this unfamiliar place. Clutching the novel, Willa retreated to her modest room, the flicker of the oil lamp casting a warm glow on the rough walls. As she readied herself for the night, her mind wandered to a life that might have been. What would James Walton's home have felt like? Would she have had a space of her own to dream in, or would the weight of wifely obligations have pressed upon her from the very first day? Sinking beneath the patched quilt, she wrestled with her restless thoughts. Had she chosen this path, or had fate carved it for her? Regardless, the double R was her refuge now, if only for a fleeting chapter of her life. Tomorrow promised fresh trials, but also the whisper of new starts. Her final musings before sleep claimed her were of Lucas Reed's eyes, storm blue and piercing, yet softened by a surprising tenderness for a woman left stranded at a lonely train depot. Could such kindness be a foundation to build upon? Willow awoke to the vibrant pulse of ranch life. A rooster's bold cry, the distant lowing of cattle, and the rhythmic clatter of kitchenware. For a heartbeat, she lay bewildered in the strange bed, yesterday's whirlwind crashing over her like a relentless wave. The muted gray light seeping through the bare window hinted at dawn's early embrace. With purpose, Willa donned her plainest brown cotton dress, taming her chestnut locks into a neat bun. If she was to serve as housekeeper, she would embody the role with quiet dignity. Stepping into the kitchen, she found Pedro already at work, the robust aroma of brewing coffee filling the air with a comforting promise of the day ahead. The tantalizing scent of coffee wafted through the cramped kitchen, wrapping the morning in a warm embrace. "Buenos dias, señorita," Pedro greeted with a courteous nod, his voice a gentle murmur against the quiet dawn. "The boss is already out tending to the north pasture. He wanted me to let you know he'll clear out your room later today." "Thank you, Pedro," Willa replied softly, her eyes wandering over the kitchen, bathed now in the tender glow of morning. Details she'd overlooked last night emerged like whispers from the past. A cracked window pane, mended with a scrap of paper, cupboard doors hanging askew, refusing to shut, and the wooden floor, scarred with years of footsteps. Could this humble space ever feel like home? "Is there a rhythm to the day I should learn meals and the like?" she asked, curiosity threading through her tone. Pedro, pouring rich, dark coffee into 3 tin cups, outlined the day's cadence. "Breakfast at sunrise. Lucas takes his midday meal here if he's near the house. Otherwise, he packs it with him. Supper comes at sunset, when the day's labor is done." Handing her a cup, he added, "I join the boss for meals when I'm around, though often I'm out with the cattle." Willa sipped the robust brew, gratitude warming her as much as the drink. "What should I prepare for breakfast?" "I see no eggs." Pedro's lined face broke into a grin. "Ah, the chickens! They lay, but you must fetch them. The coop is just beyond the garden. I'll show you after coffee." The coop, a dilapidated structure crying for repair, housed 6 wary hens, their eyes sharp as they sized up the intruder. Under Pedro's patient gaze, Willa collected 8 eggs, though one slipped through her trembling fingers. "Not bad for a first try," Pedro encouraged with a kind nod. "Beware that brown hen she pecks." By the time Lucas rode back from the north pasture, Willa had conjured a modest breakfast: fried eggs, leftover cornbread from the night before, and fresh coffee. It paled beside her mother's lavish spreads, yet Lucas ate with quiet relish. "There's a list on my desk," he began, his tone hinting at tasks yet to unfold. As we lingered over breakfast, Lucas spoke up between mouthfuls of bread and coffee. "I'm heading to town tomorrow to fetch supplies for the ranch. Jot down anything you need for the kitchen, and I'll see to it." His words were practical, but a flicker of opportunity stirred in Willa. "I'd like to come along," she declared, her own audacity catching her off guard. "I ought to explore the town myself, and there are fabrics and materials I'll need to transform this house into a true haven." Lucas paused, his gaze assessing her resolve. "Very well, but brace yourself. The wagon ride is no gentle stroll." Willa's chin lifted with quiet defiance. "I endured the long trek from Boston. 5 miles to town won't break me." A faint, fleeting smile softened his rugged features. "I believe you." After the meal, Lucas guided her through the sprawling ranch with a deliberate pace, revealing its hidden corners. The barn sheltered 4 sturdy horses alongside the wagon team, their harnesses and tools neatly arranged. Nearby, a modest smithy stood ready for minor repairs, its anvil bearing the scars of hard labor. They paused at the vegetable garden, a pitiful sight overrun with weeds and burdened by neglect. "Haven't had the heart or hours to tend it," Lucas confessed, his voice tinged with regret as they gazed at the wilted plants. "But the earth here is rich. The last owner's wife once grew enough to sustain the entire crew, with surplus to trade in town." Willa's determination flared. "I'll breathe life back into it," she vowed, her mind already mapping out the revival. Their walk concluded at a small, fenced graveyard perched on a gentle hill behind the house. 3 weathered wooden crosses stood as solemn sentinels. "The former owners," Lucas murmured, his tone heavy with respect. "William and Sarah Davis, and their boy, Thomas. Influenza claimed them all in the bitter winter of '75. I bought this land from their daughter, who lives back east. She couldn't face returning after such loss." Willa's eyes lingered on the humble markers, her heart reaching out to Sarah, a woman who once poured her soul into this very soil. How cruel must it have felt to perish so far from the comforts of society. "It must have been a lonely end," she whispered, her voice barely stirring the still air. Following the weighty reflections of the previous moment, Lucas's voice carried a quiet reverence as he stared toward the far-off mountains, their peaks piercing the horizon. "Out here, we wager everything on this land. It nurtures us, yet it can strip us bare in an instant. You must honor both its generosity and its cruelty." Meanwhile, back at the weathered house, Willa immersed herself in the day's labor, cataloging necessities with a determined hand. The pantry stood nearly empty, the linens hung frayed and worn, and every corner cried out for a deep scrub. By the time the sun hung low, she had forged a meticulous strategy to breathe life into this bachelor's den, reshaping it into a true haven. True to his promise, Lucas returned after the midday meal to clear the clutter from her bedroom. As he hauled away the last of the saddles and crates, a modest but charming space emerged. The window framed the western mountains in a breathtaking vista, while the afternoon light bathed the sparse furnishings in a golden warmth. "Thank you," Willa murmured, her voice tinged with genuine gratitude as Lucas hefted the final load. "This changes everything." He shrugged, almost dismissive. "It's hardly a grand room." But her response was firm, resolute. "It's mine. And that alone means the world." Her words hung in the air, laden with unspoken depth, prompting Lucas to study her with a keener eye. "I reckon it would," he said softly, pausing before continuing. "I know this isn't the dream that drew you west. I'm grateful you're facing it with such grit." Willa's correction came gently, yet with conviction. "I came for a fresh start. The shape it takes matters less than the chance it offers." Lucas gave a slow nod, sensing the weight of what she left unsaid, that any life where she held the reins was infinitely better than one dictated by others' whims. That evening, Willa crafted a hearty meal from the pantry's dwindling reserves, simmering a stew of the last vegetables and salt pork, paired with biscuits just shy of too crisp. As they shared the simple fare, Lucas opened up, his words flowing more freely about the ranch, its relentless trials and untapped promise. Could this rugged land, with all its hardships, truly become the foundation of something enduring? Following the weighty reflections of the past, the conversation at the table turned to the rugged realities of ranching. Lucas, with a glint of cautious hope in his eyes, shared his vision for Double R. With the right stewardship, he believed the ranch could thrive. The drought had struck a harsh blow, yet the herd was slowly recovering. "We've got around 100 head now," he said, a note of quiet pride in his voice. "And I'm counting on 20 new calves come spring." Will, eager to grasp the scope of this life, ventured, "Is that a lot?" Lucas broke into a faint smile, snapping a biscuit in two. "It's humble." Some of the vast ranches boast thousands, but this is enough to carve out a decent living if the market doesn't betray us. I'm not chasing cattle wealth, just a steady foothold." Willa nodded, her voice warm with understanding. Stability is no trifling dream. As Lucas gazed at her over the rim of his coffee cup, a deeper question stirred. What would you have done if Walton hadn't turned you away? The inquiry caught Willa like a sudden gust, leaving her momentarily speechless. After a pause, she replied, "I would have been his wife. I'd have tended his home, nurtured his children, stood by his ambitions. That was the pact I made when I accepted his proposal through letters." Lucas pressed further, his tone searching. "But would your heart have sung in that life?" Willa's eyes grew distant as she weighed the thought. "Happiness wasn't the cornerstone. Survival was. My family couldn't sustain me, and Boston offered scant hope. Marriage was the pragmatic path." Lucas's brow furrowed, a shadow of concern crossing his face. "That's a chilling way to face the world, isn't it?" Willa conceded with a faint nod. "Perhaps. But women tread a narrower road than men. We must weigh our steps with cold reason." He tilted his head, curiosity lingering. "And what paths lie before you now?" Setting down her fork with deliberate care, Willa answered, "I'll work here until I've saved enough to stand on my own, or until—" Her words trailed off, heavy with unspoken possibility. "Until?" Lucas urged gently. "Until the tides of life shift," she concluded, her voice a whisper of caution. A silent undercurrent pulsed between them, hinting at a bond that might deepen. Though neither dared to name it. After a lingering pause, Lucas spoke, his tone resolute. "You've got a home here for as long as you wish. That much is certain." Following the weighty conversation of the previous evening, Willa found herself restless under the flickering glow of a lantern. That night, she poured her thoughts into her journal, the scratch of her pen a quiet companion in the stillness. Her musings circled around the double R and its enigmatic owner, Lucas Reed. He defied every preconception she had harbored, neither the gruff, untamed cowboy of sensational tales, nor the slick-tongued swindler she had braced herself against when his surprising proposition came. Instead, Lucas emerged as a man of quiet strength, straightforward yet thoughtful, carrying an air of self-assurance and a deep respect for those around him. Could she truly carve out a life in this unfamiliar place? For the first time since departing Boston's familiar cobblestones, a fragile seed of hope sprouted within her. What if this unforeseen twist of fate wasn't a calamity, but the very foundation of a destiny she could shape with her own hands? The following morning, as they journeyed toward Copper Creek, Willa's eyes drank in the raw splendor of the desert landscape. Bathed in the crisp light of dawn, the terrain unveiled its harsh yet breathtaking allure-jagged mountains, loomed like ancient guardians in the distance. Mesas stood as silent watchtowers, and vibrant wildflowers and cactus blooms splashed unexpected color across the arid scrub. Lucas, guiding the wagon with steady hands, occasionally gestured toward significant landmarks, sharing fragments of the land's story. "That ridge over yonder marks the northern edge of the Double R. The creek cutting through it flows even in the driest years. That's the lifeblood of this place," he explained. Willa, clad in her worn slate-blue traveling dress, the best she had left, absorbed every word, striving to connect with this rugged territory she now called home, if only for a fleeting chapter. "How did this ranch become yours?" she ventured, curiosity stirring as the wagon jolted along the uneven path. Lucas tilted his hat to shield his eyes from the relentless sun. "Started as a cowhand at 16, worked a decade under the sun and stars, climbed to foreman at the Circle T, saved every hard-earned penny until this land was mine." As the conversation lingered on the past, Lucas's face darkened with a shadow of old struggles. "Penny," he began, his voice rough with memory. "When I learned the Double R was up for grabs, I poured every ounce of my soul into claiming it. Nearly lost everything during that merciless drought. Every hope, every dream, but somehow we clawed our way back." Willis, moved by the raw determination, nodded with genuine respect. "To build an empire from mere dust, that's nothing short of extraordinary." Lucas, uneasy with the admiration, shrugged it off with a wry grin. "Stubborn, that's all. My mother never let me forget it." As they neared the outskirts of town, a ripple of anxiety stirred in Willa's chest. What would they think of her, this stranger in their midst? People will have questions about me, she murmured. Lucas's reply was firm, almost defiant. Let them speculate. You owe no one your story. Under the morning light, Copper Creek pulsed with a newfound energy, its streets alive with the clatter of wagons and the steady rhythm of hooves. Gone was the ominous stillness Willa had felt upon her arrival. Now the town brimmed with purpose as shops bustled with early trade. Lucas guided the wagon to a stop before the general store, securing the brake before rounding to assist Willa. A harsh voice cut through the air from across the street, where a burly man loitered outside the saloon. Heard you took in Walton's cast-off. Lucas's jaw tightened, but Willa's gentle touch on his arm steadied him. It's fine, she whispered, her voice resolute. I feel no shame in being discarded by a man so blind to worth. A faint smirk tugged at Lucas's lips. Raising his voice for all to hear, he shot back, Mrs. Reed and I have business, Barker. Shouldn't you be somewhere else? The title Mrs. Reed sent a shiver through Willa, though she masked it, stepping into the store with Lucas at her side. Inside, the shopkeeper, a wiry man with spectacles perched precariously on his nose, eyed them with unabashed curiosity. Mornin', Mr. Simmons, Lucas greeted with a nod. This is Willa. She's here to lend a hand at the Double R. Simmons's brows shot up, a glint of humor in his tone. Lending a hand, eh? Is that the phrase now? Yet there was no malice, only a playful jest. Willa, choosing candor, spoke up. I'm the housekeeper, she stated plainly, meeting his gaze with quiet resolve. Following the tense undercurrents of the previous encounter, a wave of relief washed over Willa as Mr. Reed, with his quiet generosity, extended an offer of employment after her prior plans crumbled to dust. Housekeeper, wasn't it? Simmons cast a sly, knowing glance at Lucas, whose stoic expression betrayed nothing. Well, what can I do for you fine folks today? He asked with a grin, eager to assist. For the next hour, they combed through the store, gathering essentials with care: sacks of flour, granules of sugar, rich coffee grounds, dried provisions, seeds to coax life from the garden soil, and soft fabric for curtains to warm a home. Willa weighed each choice with precision, her heart heavy with the knowledge that every coin spent drew from Lucas's hard-earned reserves. When Lucas slipped outside to discuss a repair with the blacksmith, Simmons leaned in close over the counter, his voice a conspiratorial murmur. Walton's a spiteful wretch, mark my words. You're far better off with Reed. Whatever your arrangement, he's a decent soul, honorable in all he does. I appreciate your kindness, Willa responded with measured grace, though I must clarify, my role is strictly that of housekeeper. Simmons's smile held a glint of mischief. Of course, but if it grows into something more, well, that's your business, isn't it? He deftly wrapped a bolt of calico in crisp brown paper. This town needs more good women, wed or not. Too many rough men and far too little refinement, wouldn't you agree? When Lucas returned, they finalized their purchases and heaved the supplies into the wagon. Their journey led next to the dress shop, where Willa picked out practical patterns and sturdy fabrics, better suited to the rugged demands of ranch life than her delicate Boston gowns. Mrs. Abernathy, the shop's warm-hearted owner, tutted with empathy as Willa shared fragments of her tale. That Walton wouldn't recognize a lady of worth if she poured his tea in a silver parlor. You stop by whenever you crave a woman's companionship, dear. There aren't many of us in these wild parts. Their final errand took them to the post office, where Lucas dispatched a letter, and Willa, with a tremor of hesitation, inquired about sending a message to her family back east. How could she begin to explain all that had transpired? As the dust of the Boston road settled behind them, Willa turned to Lucas with a quiet urgency in her voice. They should at least know I'm safe, she confided, her tone tinged with a fragile hope, even if their hearts remain unmoved by my fate. Lucas nodded, his agreement a silent pillar of support. Send any replies to the ranch address. It's secure there. As they readied to depart the bustling town, a figure emerged from the crowd, striding toward their wagon with an air of calculated confidence. Clad in a tailored suit, a gold watch chain glinting at his waist, the man's wealth was unmistakable, yet his ruddy complexion hinted at nights drowned in excess. Reed, he acknowledged Lucas with a curt nod before his gaze shifted to Willa, curiosity flickering in his eyes. And this, I presume, is the young woman I've heard whispers about. James Walton spoke of a misstep with a mail-order bride. Lucas's face clouded with a storm of restrained anger. No misstep, Hargrove! Just Walton's lack of decency. With a protective gesture, he assisted Willa onto the wagon seat. This is Willa. She's with the Double R now. Hargrove's eyes narrowed, a sly edge to his scrutiny. Is that so? Well, Miss, or should I say Mrs. Reed? Lucas cut in sharply before Willa could speak. Mrs. Reed, he confirmed, his voice a shield. Hargrove's lips twitched with skepticism. How fortuitous for you both. I hadn't heard of any vows exchanged. Lucas's reply was cool, unyielding. Didn't know we needed your blessing, Hargrove. Now, if you'll step aside, we've a long journey back. As the wagon rolled away, Willa stole a glance at Lucas, noting the taut line of his jaw. Who was that? She murmured. Franklin Hargrove, Lucas replied, loosening his grip on the reins. He owns the bank, meddles in every deal in the county, and thinks himself king of these parts. He's also tied to Walton. Both are hungry for the water rights along the creek on my land. Is that why you called me your wife again? To stake some claim before him? Her question hung heavy in the air. Lucas shifted, unease flickering across his features. Partly, yes. But mostly because out here, a woman alone faces harsher judgment, less respect. His eyes met hers, sincere and searching. If it troubles you, I'll stop. I never meant to overstep. How could she weigh the protection of a name against the weight of its lie? As the conversation from the previous moment lingered in the air, Willa mulled over the weight of their decision. Marriage, though a facade, draped her in a cloak of security and dignity amidst a world quick to judge. What a pragmatic shield it was against the harsh winds of scandal. She spoke with resolve, her voice cutting through the silence. I'm not opposed, provided we both understand the truth of our arrangement. Lucas, his expression softening with relief, gave a simple nod. Always, he assured her, sealing their unspoken pact. The journey back to the ranch unfolded in a hush, each of them ensnared by swirling thoughts. As they reached the ridge overlooking the sprawling Double R, Willa felt an unfamiliar stirring within her, not quite a sense of home, but the tender sprout of something akin to it. Below, the huddle of buildings, cradled by the endless expanse of earth, stood as more than mere refuge. They whispered of untapped potential. In the fortnight that followed, Willa poured her soul into reviving the heart of the Double R's main house. She scoured floors until they gleamed, cleansed walls of their weary dust, and adorned windows with curtains she'd painstakingly stitched from town-bought fabric. The sparse furniture found new purpose under her careful hands, while the kitchen emerged as her sanctuary, meticulously arranged for seamless work, its pantry brimming once more. Lucas and Pedro toiled relentlessly with the cattle and endless ranch repairs, returning each dusk weary but warmed by the transformations awaiting them. Willa's meals blossomed with newfound boldness, her novice hands coaxing flavor from humble provisions on the old cook stove. The garden, however, loomed as a formidable foe. Many plants lay beyond rescue, yet Willa battled the relentless weeds, tilling the earth for fresh beginnings with seeds from town. Pedro, a quiet sage of desert cultivation, shared his wisdom on what could defy the unforgiving climate. One twilight, as they labored side by side to erect a barrier against hungry rabbits, he reminisced, "My mother tended a plot much like this. Chilies, tomatoes, beans, squash. Even in the driest years, we never went without." His words hung between them, rich with memory. Could such resilience take root here, too? "How on earth do you manage it?" Will asked. His curiosity piqued as he leaned forward, eyes wide with genuine interest. "I've only ever known the bustle of city streets. My understanding of gardening is pieced together from dusty old books." Pedro's face lit up with a warm, knowing smile, delighted by the question. "Ah, señorita," he replied with a gentle nod. "The desert holds secrets of growth and life, but only for those who learn to listen to its silent whispers." As days turned into weeks, a quiet rhythm settled over their lives. Willa awoke in the tender hush before dawn, kindling the fire for breakfast. Her daylight hours unfurled in the garden, tending to chores with a growing sense of purpose, while evenings found her crafting supper with care. After the meal, as the men unwound with steaming mugs of coffee or tinkered with tools on the porch, she often retreated to the soft glow of a lamp, losing herself in a book or the steady rhythm of her needle and thread. Lucas, ever mindful, honored her boundaries with a quiet respect, never pressing beyond the space she carved for herself. Their exchanges deepened over time, evolving from mundane ranch concerns to fleeting glimpses of their inner worlds. She learned he hailed from Missouri, the child of a blacksmith, and had ventured west at 16, chasing the wild allure of adventure. In turn, he came to know of her education at a girls' school, cut short at 17 when her father's business crumbled, thrusting her into the role of family provider. "I took up work as a seamstress," she confided one evening, as they sat on the porch, the horizon ablaze with fiery oranges and deep purples. "Later, I clerked in a shop. But when my youngest brother fell ill and medicine became an unreachable luxury, my parents arranged my union with Mr. Walton. His notice sought an educated woman from a respectable yet humble family." Lucas's brow furrowed, a shadow crossing his face. "They traded you for medicine?" Willa exhaled softly, her gaze distant. "Not so coldly as that. They thought they were safeguarding my future while lightening their load, and I consented." Her hand smoothed the fabric of her skirt, a gesture of quiet resolve. Life rarely deals in perfect options, especially for a woman. "Doesn't sit right with me," Lucas grumbled under his breath. "Perhaps not," she murmured, her voice tinged with reflection. "But this path brought me here, to a place less daunting than I once dreaded. Could fate, in its tangled ways, have woven something worthwhile from such beginnings?" Her lips curved into a faint, tender smile, a quiet gesture that spoke volumes. The idea of doubling down on their efforts had its own undeniable charm. Lucas mirrored her expression, his features softened by the gentle glow of the dwindling daylight. "I am glad to hear it," he murmured, a warmth in his voice that matched the moment. As April surrendered to May, the rhythm of ranch life grew more demanding, a relentless call to action. Newborn calves cried for care, fences bore the scars of winter's harsh touch and needed mending, and the looming summer cattle drive to the railhead in Tucson demanded meticulous preparation. Lucas and Pedro poured themselves into the toil, their days stretching into nights, often returning long after the stars had claimed the sky. One such evening, when Lucas failed to join them for supper, Willa couldn't bear the thought of him laboring on an empty stomach. She wrapped a plate of hearty fare and ventured out to the north pasture, where he'd mentioned he'd be. Under the flickering dance of lantern light, she found him bent over a frail, ailing calf, his brow furrowed in deep focus as he urged the tiny creature to drink from a bottle. "I brought you something to sustain you," she said softly, stepping closer with care to avoid spooking either man or beast. Lucas lifted his gaze, exhaustion mingling with surprise in his eyes. "You didn't have to go to this trouble," he protested gently. "And you didn't have to shelter a wayward mail-order bride," she retorted with a playful edge, placing the plate on a weathered stump nearby. "Yet here we stand," he replied, a chuckle escaping him, rich and comforting against the crisp night air. "Touché," he conceded, nodding toward the calf. "His mother didn't survive the birth. I've been fighting to keep him alive, but he's stubborn about the bottle." Willa sank to her knees beside them, her eyes tracing the calf's trembling form. Could she make a difference? Lucas paused, then passed her the bottle of milk. "Hold it just so," he instructed. "Angle it to keep the air out." Their hands grazed in the exchange, a fleeting touch that shouldn't have mattered, yet it lingered in the air between them. Willa focused on the calf, her voice a soothing whisper as she offered the bottle. To her astonishment, the little one began to drink with a newfound vigor, surpassing its efforts for Lucas. "Well, I'll be amazed," Lucas breathed, his gaze fixed on the scene, a flicker of hope igniting in his weary eyes. Caught in a moment of wonder, Willa murmured, "He seems to favor you over me. Could it be he just craves a different kind of warmth?" Her voice was soft, cautious, not to startle the hungry calf nuzzling at the bottle. Animals, after all, mirror us humans in their need for connection. Under the flickering glow of the lantern, Lucas gazed at her, his face a mystery, emotions hidden in shadow. What secrets lie behind those eyes, Willa Dawson? And you, Lucas Reed, are no less an enigma, she thought, meeting his stare. Few men would have extended the kindness you showed at that train depot, she said aloud, her tone laced with gratitude. And fewer women would have dared to accept, he countered, his voice low, resonant with meaning. A charged silence hung between them, brimming with what-ifs and could-bes, until the calf, impatient with the empty bottle, nudged it aside, shattering the fragile tension. "We'll need to feed him every few hours," Lucas noted, grounding them back to the task at hand. I'll move him to the barn tonight for shelter. Willa's response came swiftly, earnest. Let me help with the feedings. It's no burden. Truly, Lucas hesitated, his gaze searching hers. You've shouldered so much already. But she smiled, resolute. I thrive on purpose, and nurturing this little soul feels like a calling worth answering. Together, they lifted the fragile creature, settling him into a stall lined with golden straw, a safe haven amidst the rugged world outside. As they strolled back toward the house, the night sky unfurled above, a canvas of glittering stars over this untamed, breathtaking land. Willa's heart swelled with an unexpected peace, a quiet joy she hadn't anticipated finding here. The orphaned calf, whom she christened Augustus after a beloved literary hero, became her cherished mission. Night after night, she rose to tend to him, pouring her strength into his frail frame, coaxing life back into his trembling limbs until victory was hers. He lived. Lucas observed her unwavering care with a silent nod of respect, offering guidance only when needed, allowing her the freedom to forge her own bond. He's taken to you completely, he remarked one golden afternoon, as Augustus, now surer on his wobbly legs, trailed Willa through the barnyard like a loyal pup. He's convinced you're his mother. How profound, she mused, that such trust could bloom in a heart so small, in a world so vast and unforgiving. I reckon I'm something of a wanderer myself. Willer mused aloud, his fingers gently rubbing behind the calf's ears with a tender touch. We're both strangers, aren't we? Finding our footing in a world that feels so foreign. As spring deepened, May ushered in the first bounty from the rejuvenated garden crisp radishes, tender spring onions, and vibrant lettuce that breathed new life into their daily fare. Willa's heart swelled with pride as she presented the vegetables she'd nurtured with her own hands, especially when Lucas, with a flicker of surprise in his eyes, praised the enhancement to their usual meals. Never imagined I'd crave rabbit food, he quipped, a playful grin tugging at his lips as she paired a fresh salad with their customary beans and beef. But this is something else. Just wait until the tomatoes come in, she countered with a spark of excitement. Then you'll truly understand the magic of it. Their light-hearted exchanges had woven themselves into the fabric of mealtimes, a warm rhythm that felt more like home with each passing day. Willa caught herself stealing glances, hoping to coax one of Lucas's elusive smiles, cherishing each one she managed to draw out. And Lucas, in turn, seemed to linger at the table, their talk stretching far beyond the last bite, as if reluctant to let the moment slip away. It was on one such evening, with the windows flung wide to invite the gentle, late spring breeze, that Lucas ventured into uncharted territory. The town's hosting a Founders' Day celebration next weekend, he mentioned, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup with a quiet intensity. There'll be dancing, a picnic, all the usual revelry. I thought, maybe you'd like to join me. Willa paused, her mending, her needle stilling as his words caught her off guard. As your housekeeper or as your wife? She asked, her voice steady yet searching. Lucas held her gaze, unflinching. As whatever feels right to you. Folks have already made up their minds about us. Why not embrace the silver lining of their assumptions? You mean stepping out together without stirring whispers? She ventured. Something like that, he replied, setting his cup down with a soft clink. No need to decide this instant. I just thought a day away from the ranch might do you good. A chance to meet some of the townsfolk. As the conversation from the previous moment lingered in the air, Willa mulled over the prospect of joining other women from the surrounding ranches at the upcoming social gathering. The invitation stirred something within her. She hadn't ventured beyond the boundaries of the Double R since their last shopping excursion weeks prior, and though the solitude often brought a quiet solace, there were times it pressed heavily on her spirit. After a moment's reflection, she resolved to accept. I'd truly enjoy that, she admitted with a tentative smile, though a concern flickered in her mind. But I fear I lack anything fitting for a dance. Lucas, ever pragmatic, stood from the table with a reassuring nod. We'll visit Mrs. Abernathy at the dress shop on our way into town. She'll have something perfect. In the days that followed, Willa's thoughts were consumed by the event. What did it signify that Lucas wished to introduce her publicly as his wife? Was it merely a matter of convenience, as he'd implied, or did deeper intentions simmer beneath his words? Oh, how her heart yearned to uncover the truth. Her chance to visit the dress shop arrived sooner than anticipated. Just 3 days later, a rider from a nearby ranch galloped in with urgent news. Cattle rustlers were striking in the eastern foothills, and Lucas was needed. He'd be away for at least 2 days. Pedro will remain here at the ranch, Lucas assured her as he packed his saddlebags with hurried precision. I hate leaving you on your own, but this can't be avoided. Those thieves have already targeted 3 ranches. Willa nodded, masking the unease fluttering in her chest. We'll be fine, she replied softly, though her voice trembled. Please, take care of yourself. Lucas paused, his gaze locking with hers, intense and piercing, stealing the very breath from her lungs. I will, he promised, then hesitated, his tone softening. When I return, we need to discuss plans. For what lies ahead? Her pulse quickened. What could he mean? Something lasting, perhaps. His voice grew rough, his focus shifting abruptly to the straps of his saddlebag, as if to shield his vulnerability. If you're willing, that is. Before Willa could muster a response, Pedro appeared at the threshold, announcing the arrival of the other ranchers. The fleeting chance for deeper understanding slipped away, leaving her heart suspended in a tender, unspoken question. As the dust settled from Lucas's departure with the stern-faced posse, Willa stood rooted, her mind swirling with unanswered questions. What lay ahead for him and for them? The next morning, Pedro's kind offer to escort her into town for supplies and a visit to the dress shop felt like a lifeline. She seized the opportunity with a hopeful heart, yearning not just to prepare for the Founders' Day celebration, but to pave the way for a deeper, more meaningful exchange with Lucas when he returned. At the dress shop, Mrs. Abernathy greeted Willa with a warmth that melted her lingering doubts, guiding her to a cozy back room where an array of ready-made dresses awaited their final touches. I've been longing for you to stop by, the older woman beamed, unveiling a stunning blue silk gown adorned with delicate lace trim. Fresh from Tucson, my dear, it would complement your complexion like a summer sky. Willa's fingers brushed the luxurious fabric, a pang of longing in her chest. It's breathtaking, she murmured, but I fear it's far beyond my reach. Rubbish! Mrs. Abernathy exclaimed with a dismissive wave. Lucas Reed has the means to ensure his lady shines at Founders' Day. The whole town will be dressed to the nines. Willa opened her mouth to protest. I'm not truly his wife. But the words caught in her throat. What was she then? More than a hired hand, surely, after weeks of shared suppers, heartfelt talks, and toiling together to carve out a future on the Double R. Mrs. Abernathy, mistaking her silence for shyness, leaned closer with a conspiratorial whisper. Darling, out here, formalities mean little. Half the unions in this territory began without a preacher's blessing. It's the bond that counts. And word is, Reed never spared a glance for another woman until you came along. Doesn't that tell you something? Swayed by her words, Willa slipped into the gown. It embraced her form as though crafted for her alone, needing only slight tweaks at the hem and waist. In Mrs. Abernathy's mirror, she glimpsed a vision of herself reborn, not the weary mail-order bride in tattered garb, but a woman poised for something extraordinary. As the fabric of the dress cascaded over her, Willa transformed from a woman in simple frontier clothes into a vision of grace, as if she were born to charm this rugged town. Mrs. Abernathy, with a gleam of mischief in her eye, adjusted the hem with deft fingers. Lucas won't be able to look away, my dear, she declared with a knowing chuckle. Willa's protest came softly, almost a whisper. It's not like that with us. Yet the older woman's smile held a wisdom honed by decades of watching hearts intertwine. Not yet, perhaps, but in my 40 years, I've seen sparks where none dared admit them. There's something between you two, whether you've named it or not. Willa couldn't ignore the quickening of her pulse at the thought of Lucas's gaze falling upon her in that shimmering blue silk, nor could she shake his enigmatic talk of lasting ties. Could it be that their initial arrangement, born of necessity, had quietly woven itself into something deeper, something tender? As the wagon rattled back to the ranch, the carefully packaged dress nestled beside her, Willa's eyes roamed over the Double R with a newfound wonder. The humble house now adorned with fresh curtains, the garden bursting into life, the corral and sturdy outbuildings, all of it had etched itself into her heart over these fleeting weeks. Could this place, once just a job, truly become her sanctuary, her home? The next evening, Lucas rode in, cloaked in dust and fatigue, yet mercifully unscathed. Over a warm supper Willa had kept waiting, he recounted the capture of the rustlers, handed over to the territorial marshal. 3 fools from the north, thinking isolated ranches were easy pickings, he said, savoring the hearty stew. They won't dare try that again. Willa's relief was palpable. I'm so glad you're safe. Was anyone harmed? She asked, her voice laced with concern. Jim Colton took a shot to the arm, but he'll recover, Lucas assured her. Then his gaze softened across the flickering candlelight of the table. This house, it feels different with you here. Warmer, better. That simple, unadorned remark touched Willa's heart far deeper than any ornate praise ever could. Seeking to mask the warmth creeping into her cheeks, she shifted the conversation with a casual air. I rode into town with Pedro yesterday, she shared, her voice light. Mrs. Abernathy was kind enough to help me pick out a dress for the Founders' Day celebration. Lucas's lips curved into a gentle smile. I'm glad, he said warmly. I want nothing more than for you to savor every moment of it. He placed his fork down with a soft clink, his tone growing earnest. Willa, about what I mentioned before I left. A sudden jarring crash from the barn cut him off mid-sentence, followed by Pedro's urgent shout echoing through the still air. In an instant, Lucas was on his feet, seizing his hat and striding toward the door with purpose. Stay inside, he commanded, his voice sharp with concern. Could be those rustlers' allies sniffing around for trouble. Willa's pulse raced as she peered through the window, her breath catching at the sight of Lucas and Pedro approaching the barn, rifles poised, their every movement taut with vigilance. Time stretched endlessly, though surely only minutes passed until their shoulders finally eased. The threat dissolved. Lucas returned, his face a mix of relief and mild irritation. Just a raccoon, he muttered, shaking his head. Got into the feed storage and toppled a pile of crates in its scramble to get out. The interruption shattered the fragile moment, and Lucas did not revisit the earlier topic that night. As Willa retired to bed, her mind swirled with a bittersweet blend of disappointment and curiosity. What surprises might Founders' Day hold? The celebration dawned on a flawless, late May Saturday. The sky a boundless blue, the air kissed with gentle warmth. Willa took her time preparing, weaving her hair into an intricate style, far beyond her usual no-nonsense bun, and slipping into the blue silk dress Mrs. Abernathy had meticulously tailored just in time. When she stepped into the main room, her breath hitched. There stood Lucas, awaiting her, clad in his finest dark suit, aged but impeccably kept, paired with a crisp white shirt and a neatly tied string tie. His beard was trimmed, his hair slicked back, casting aside his usual rugged edge for a striking, polished presence. How could a man so familiar suddenly seem so new? Following the tender moment of mutual admiration, Lucas's gaze lingered on Willa, transforming him from a rugged rancher into a striking vision of charm. The look in his eyes as he beheld her was worth every ounce of effort she had poured into her appearance. You look, he started, only to falter, words slipping away like a shy breeze. That is, the dress is. Willa, with a gentle smile, spared him the struggle. Thank you, she interjected softly. You look quite dashing yourself. The journey to town buzzed with unspoken excitement, a palpable thrill weaving through the air. Copper Creek had undergone a magical rebirth for the celebration, its main street adorned with vibrant bunting, tables arranged for a communal feast, and a sturdy wooden platform erected for the evening's dance. Already, the town thrummed with life as ranchers and their families poured in from the surrounding valleys, each dressed in their Sunday best, a rare display of finery amid the dust and toil. As Lucas steadied Willa while she descended from the wagon, she couldn't ignore the inquisitive stares cast their way. Whispers of curiosity seemed to ripple through the crowd. Mrs. Abernathy, with a warm, approving smile, bustled over to greet them. That dress is simply divine, she exclaimed, her delight infectious. Come now, let me whisk you away to meet the other ladies. Lucas, you won't mind if I borrow your lovely wife for a while, will you? With a reassuring grin, Lucas glanced at Willa. Not in the least, so long as she's back in my arms for the dancing. The afternoon swirled by in a flurry of new faces and heartfelt exchanges. Willa found herself introduced to the wives of nearby ranchers, the kind-hearted schoolteacher, the preacher's gentle spouse, and the tight-knit circle of women who anchored this rugged community. Most welcomed her with open arms, their eyes alight with intrigue about the woman who had captured Lucas Reed's heart. "We'd nearly lost hope for Lucas ever finding someone," confided Mrs. Colton, whose husband had been injured in the Rustler skirmish. "He was wedded to that ranch, or so we believed. And then you arrived. Oh, what a delightful surprise." Willa, uneasy with the half-truths shadowing their story, murmured modestly, "It wasn't quite so planned." Yet how could she shatter their warm assumptions? As the lively chatter of the gathering continued, Mrs. Colton's voice carried a warm note of approval. "It does my heart good to see him with someone," she remarked with a knowing smile. "That double Arcticus, such a grand property, only wants a woman's care to truly become a home." Throughout the day, Willa couldn't help but feel the weight of Lucas's gaze from across the crowd, his eyes lingering on her with a quiet intensity, as if unraveling a puzzle only he could see. He immersed himself in the men's pursuits, testing his aim in the shooting contest, tossing horseshoes with a focused grip, debating cattle prices and water rights with furrowed brow. Yet time and again his attention drifted back to her, magnetic and unspoken. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues over the gathering, musicians took their place on the platform, their instruments humming to life with tentative notes. Tables were swept aside to make room for dancing, and lanterns flickered to life, pushing back the creeping twilight. It was then that Lucas emerged at Willa's side, his presence both steady and startling as the first dance was called. "Might I have the honor of this dance, Mrs. Reed?" he asked, his tone formal yet tinged with something deeper, his hand extended in quiet invitation. Willa placed her hand in his, feeling the rough texture of calluses earned through toil, yet marveling at the tenderness in his grasp. "You may, Mr. Reed," she replied softly. He guided her to the dance floor, his hand resting lightly at her waist as they joined the swirling couples. "I must confess, I'm no dancer," he admitted under his breath as the music swelled. Willa's lips curved into a faint smile. "Nor am I. Shall we stumble through this together?" To her surprise, Lucas moved with an unexpected ease, defying the rugged life he led atop a horse. They found their rhythm swiftly, weaving through the other dancers to the spirited strains of fiddle and guitar. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, his voice low as they turned in step. "Immensely," Willa admitted, her heart lighter than it had been in ages. "It's been a day to remember." "Good," he said, his grip tightening ever so slightly at her waist. "I've been wrestling with what to say, how to broach this. I'm no poet, Willa. Words don't come easy to me." Her pulse quickened at his candor. Oh, what could he mean? She had never sought eloquence, only truth. As the tender strains of the music softened, Lucas gently pulled Willa a fraction closer, his touch both cautious and earnest. "Willa, I mean to speak plainly," he murmured, his voice a quiet anchor in the fading melody. "I want you to stay, not as a mere housekeeper, but as my true wife, in heart and name, beyond any facade." Though she had sensed a confession brewing, the raw sincerity of his words stole the air from her lungs. Could she dare to dream of such a bond so soon? "Lucas, it's been scarcely 2 months since we met," she whispered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. His gaze, unwavering, met hers. "2 months is long enough for me to be certain of my feelings. I hold you in the highest regard, Willa. Your presence brightens every corner of the Double R. I find joy in your company, and I'm convinced I could bring you happiness, if only you'd let me try." The music drifted to a close, yet they lingered on the dance floor, oblivious to the other couples drifting toward the refreshment tables, caught in a moment that felt like theirs alone. "This isn't the path I envisioned for myself," Willa admitted, her voice barely audible. "Nor I," Lucas confessed with a faint, rueful smile. "But isn't it astonishing how the unforeseen can become our greatest blessing?" As decorum required, he released her when the melody ceased, though his eyes clung to hers, searching, hoping. "There's no rush for an answer. Take all the time you need to consider." Before Willa could form a reply, a sudden uproar shattered the fragile stillness. James Walton, the man she had once been promised to, shoved through the crowd, his face a storm of rage or liquor, perhaps both. "There she is," he bellowed, jabbing a finger at Willa. "The woman meant to be mine, snatched away by Reed before she even thought to flee this town." Lucas instinctively stepped before her, his frame rigid with defiance. You cast her aside, Walton, abandoned her at the depot. Whatever followed is no longer your affair." Walton staggered closer, his fine suit disheveled, his bloodshot eyes burning with spite. "I reconsidered my choice." Returning the very next day, my heart pounding with resolve, I found her already gone, swept away into your world. A ripple of whispers coursed through the gathered crowd, their murmurs a mix of shock and curiosity. At that moment, Will felt a fierce wave of anger rise within him, not just at Walton's crude insinuation, but at the audacity of treating her as a mere possession to be seized or cast aside on a whim. "Mr. Walton," she declared with unwavering clarity, stepping boldly beside Lucas instead of shrinking behind him. "Your choice was made the moment you penned that cold letter, dismissing me without even the courtesy of a dialogue. You hold no sway over me now." Walton's voice cut through, sharp and entitled. "I paid for your journey west. Surely that means something." But Willa's response was icy, unyielding. "It means you bought a ticket, nothing more. It does not grant you ownership, nor does it bind me with obligation, and it most certainly does not buy affection." Heads nodded among the townsfolk. Willa caught the approving looks shared between Mrs. Abernathy and Mrs. Colton, their silent support a balm to her spirit. Sensing the tide of opinion turning, Walton shifted his approach, his gaze narrowing on Lucas. "And you, Reed, stealing another man's promised bride? Is that the honor you stand for?" Lucas, ever composed, met the accusation with quiet strength. "I offered Miss Dawson work when she needed it most. Anything beyond that has been entirely her decision." His eyes softened as they met Willa's, a tender understanding passing between them. "I would never dream of owning her or dictating her path." The contrast was undeniable. Walton, unkempt and belligerent, against Lucas, steadfast and reverent. Any lingering doubts Willa held about Lucas's proposal dissolved in that illuminating instant. "Mr. Walton," she stated with resolute finality, "I stand precisely where I wish to be, with the one I've chosen. Your chance slipped away when you judged me unworthy without truly knowing me. Now, if you'll pardon us." Turning to Lucas, whose gaze held nothing but admiration, she added with a spark of warmth, "I believe you owe me another dance, Mr. Reed. Shall we?" How could one moment crystallize so much certainty? As the echoes of the previous moment lingered, Lucas extended his arm to Willa, with a smile so genuine it seemed to light up the very air around them. "Shall we, Mrs. Reed?" he asked, his voice warm with promise. With a nod, she accepted, and together they returned to the dance floor, leaving Walton's incredulous stammering fading into the background. As they glided into the rhythm of the music, Willa leaned in close, her breath a soft whisper against his ear. "Yes," she murmured, and Lucas echoed her with a fervor that stirred her heart. "Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I'll be your wife, truly your wife." Her eyes locked with his, unwavering and clear. "Not out of necessity for protection or stability, though I'm grateful for those gifts, but because I've grown to cherish you, Lucas Reed, in ways I never anticipated." His face broke into a smile that rivaled the first light of dawn creeping over rugged mountain peaks, slow at first, then bursting with radiant joy. "I've been halfway in love with you since that day at the depot, when you stood so defiant, unbroken by Walton's cruelty," he confessed. "Only halfway," Willa teased, a newfound lightness bubbling within her. "The other half fell swiftly," he replied, his grip on her hand firm and sure as they swayed to the melody. The night unfolded in a whirlwind of dance and heartfelt exchanges, punctuated by the warm congratulations of onlookers who had seen the clash with Walton. By the time they departed the festivity, whispers of their upcoming formal union had woven through the crowd like wildfire. The journey back to the Double R Ranch carried a profound shift, a silent understanding that felt both earth-shaking and destined. Upon arriving, Lucas gently assisted Willa from the wagon, his hands lingering on hers under the pale glow of moonlight. "I meant every word," he said earnestly. "I want you here because it's your choice, not an obligation or a cage." "I know," Willa answered, her voice a tender whisper in the night. How could she not, when every look, every touch spoke of his sincerity? As the moment unfolded from our last shared glance, I found myself whispering a heartfelt yes. Lucas paused, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, before he leaned in with a deliberate slowness. offering me the chance to retreat if my heart wavered, but I stood firm and his lips met mine in a tender, searching caress, a question wrapped in warmth. My response was instinctive. My hands found their place on his shoulders, and the kiss grew deeper, transforming into a silent vow, a pledge of what could be. When we finally parted, breathless and flushed, Lucas pressed his forehead to mine, a quiet intimacy binding us. "We should hold off on this until the preacher seals our bond," he murmured, his voice laced with a reluctant sense of duty. "Can't afford to stoke the town's whispers any further," I replied with a soft chuckle. "A little late for caution, don't you think? But yes, let's honor tradition for now." 2 weeks later, the modest church in Copper Creek cradled our union. It was an unadorned affair, graced by the few souls we'd grown to cherish. Pedro, Mrs. Abernathy, the Coltons, and a scattering of neighboring ranchers with their families. I donned my cherished blue silk dress once more, now adorned with a delicate cluster of wildflowers Mrs. Colton had helped me pick at dawn's first light. As we exchanged our vows, my mind wandered down the winding road that had guided me here. How strange, I mused. How could a failed mail-order bride arrangement and an unforeseen proposal at a dusty train depot weave into this tapestry of trust and tenderness, built over shared suppers and toil? None of it was by design, yet every step felt essential to stand beside this man, whose gaze held such unguarded devotion. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher intoned. "You may kiss your bride." Lucas's kiss was soft, yet it carried the whisper of fervor yet to unfold, a beautiful dawn to our shared journey. As we turned to face our humble assembly, the weight of the moment settled in my soul. As the warm murmurs of well-wishers enveloped the church, Willa's gaze drifted to the shadowed rear, where James Walton stood, his face a mask of enigma. Their eyes locked for a fleeting heartbeat before he turned, slipping out the door with a whisper of finality. "Is everything all right?" Lucas's voice, gentle with concern, pulled her back to the moment. With a radiant smile, Willa looked up at him, her heart anchored in certainty. Everything was more than all right. It was a dream woven into reality. The celebration that followed was humble yet brimming with joy, held at the town's quaint hotel. Laughter mingled with heartfelt toasts, each glass raised in honor of the couple's newfound bliss. As the golden afternoon began to fade, Lucas and Willa bid tender farewells, embarking on the journey back to the Double R, their sanctuary, now a shared haven of love. Pedro, ever thoughtful, had chosen to linger in town for the night, granting the newlyweds the sacred solitude of their first evening, united as one. Stepping into their home, the familiar walls seemed to hum with a fresh, vibrant energy, every corner alive with promise. That night, as silvery moonlight danced through the curtains Willa had lovingly crafted, husband and wife unveiled their deepest selves to one another. Their union was a delicate balance of tenderness and fervor, a profound embodiment of the connection forged through months of shared struggles and dreams. Later, nestled in the protective warmth of Lucas's embrace, Willa's thoughts wandered to the winding path of destiny that led her here. "I ought to thank James Walton," she whispered, her voice heavy with drowsy gratitude. "His rejection paved the way to you." Lucas's arms tightened around her, a fortress of devotion. "His loss, my treasure," he murmured, brushing a kiss against her temple. "Though, don't you wonder if fate would have drawn us together, no matter the obstacles?" "Perhaps," Willa mused, charmed by the idea of an inevitable bond. "Yet I cherish our tale as it unfolded abandoned at the depot, only to be saved by a cowboy with a daring proposal." "Rescued," Lucas interjected with a tender correction, his voice soft yet firm. "No, you were offered a chance, and your courage led you to seize it. That's a world apart." In the dim veil of night, Willa's lips curved into a quiet smile, warmed by his insight into what truly stirred her heart. "Indeed, it is," she murmured. As summer melted into the golden hues of autumn, the Double R flourished under their united care. The garden yielded a bountiful harvest, the cattle grew robust, and the house transformed into a sanctuary, adorned with little comforts and personal flourishes that mirrored the souls of its dwellers. Willa unearthed a profound contentment in the cadence of ranch life, the ebb and flow of seasons, the tangible link between effort and reward, the quiet triumphs of a well-tended home and thriving fields. For Lucas, a newfound delight emerged in facing each triumph and trial alongside a partner who grasped both his pragmatic worries and his unspoken bond with the land. Month by month, their marriage wove itself tighter, rooted in mutual reverence, shared toil, and an ever-deepening fondness. What began as a tentative physical connection bloomed into a wellspring of closeness and joy for them both. By November, as the first whisper of winter kissed the air, Willa's suspicion crystallized into certainty. Late spring would bring a child into their world. When she shared the news, Lucas's stoic facade shattered into pure, boundless elation. He enveloped her in a gentle, protective embrace, lifting her as if she were the most precious treasure. A family, he breathed in awe, his hand resting tenderly on her still flat belly. Our family. Can you imagine? Willa nodded, her hand overlapping his, a silent vow. It already feels like we are, just you and me, she whispered. Lucas's smile, now so familiar and cherished, lit his face. We are. This little one will only make us whole. As they readied themselves for their first Christmas at the Double R, Willa often found herself marveling how utterly, beautifully, her life had been rewritten. In under a year, what a whirlwind of change had swept through Willa's life. From a hesitant mail-order bride to a forsaken wanderer, then a ranch wife, and now an expectant mother, each shift had woven her deeper into the fabric of true happiness she now cherished. On Christmas Eve, as the faint glow of a modest pine tree, freshly cut from the nearby foothills, danced in the corner, and the warm aroma of gingerbread enveloped the kitchen, Lucas surprised her with a heartfelt gesture. He unveiled a rocking chair, crafted in secret by the town's carpenter, its polished wood gleaming under the lamplight. For when the baby arrives, he said softly, as her fingers traced the smooth curves, and for now, when you wish to rest by the fire's glow. Moved beyond words by his tenderness, Willa handed him her own offering, a framed portrait captured during their last journey to town. It depicted them standing proudly before the Double R house, her hand gently resting on his arm, their smiles radiant and full of promise. Our first family portrait, she murmured, her voice trembling with hope. Though surely not our last, don't you think? Lucas set the frame with care upon the mantel, then pulled her close, his embrace a fortress of warmth. I never foresaw this, he confessed, his tone quiet yet brimming with wonder. That day I rode into town and found you alone at the depot. I only meant to offer a stranger a temporary reprieve. How could I have known? Willa teased with a soft laugh. That you'd end up with a wife, a child on the way, and curtains framing your windows. Lucas shook his head, emotion roughening his words. No, that I'd discover everything I never knew I lacked. You've transformed the Double R, Willa. It's no longer just a ranch. It's a home leaning into his steady strength. Willa felt the profound certainty of belonging. And you, she whispered, have given me what I truly ventured west to find, not mere survival, but a sanctuary to call my own. As the gentle veil of belonging settled over them, a sanctuary emerged, a place to weave a life of meaning and joy. Beyond the window, delicate snowflakes began their silent descent, cloaking the Double R ranch in a shimmering white blanket that promised to sparkle under the dawn's tender gaze. Within the cozy embrace of their home, by the comforting glow of the fireplace, Willa Reed rested in her newly crafted rocking chair. At her feet, her husband Lucas knelt, his hand gently cradling the precious new life blossoming within her, a gesture of unspoken protection and love. This was not the destiny Willa had pictured when she stepped onto that train in Boston, driven by a mere advertisement for a mail-order bride. Oh, how fate had woven a richer tapestry. What unfolded was a love far deeper than necessity or convenience, a bond forged through shared trials and tender moments, rooted in mutual respect and heartfelt devotion. Their partnership stood as steadfast as the towering mountains guarding their Arizona haven. That night, as Willa drifted into slumber, enveloped in Lucas's warm embrace, a quiet gratitude stirred within her. She whispered silent thanks to James Walton for turning her away, to Lucas for daring to offer her a different path, and to her own brave heart for leaping into the vast unknown. Isn't it wondrous how life's sweetest journeys are often the ones left uncharted? Spring erupted across the range in a vibrant symphony of wildflowers, splashing the arid browns with bursts of purple, yellow, and crimson. The Double R's garden thrived under Willa's loving care, now supported by a local girl who assisted with heavier chores as Willa's pregnancy progressed. In late May, after an arduous day and night of labor, guided by the skilled hands of Mrs. Colton, a seasoned midwife, Willa brought forth a robust daughter. The child bore Lucas's fiery copper hair and Willa's resolute chin. They named her Sarah Elizabeth Reed, honoring Lucas's mother and Willa's grandmother. Lucas, who had worn a path on the porch with his anxious pacing, stepped into the bedroom, his heart trembling with awe and reverence. As the door creaked open, Mrs. Colton ushered Lucas inside with a gentle nod. The sight that greeted him stole his breath. His beloved Willa, weary yet glowing with an ethereal light, cradling their newborn daughter in her arms. Tears welled in the rugged rancher's eyes, unbidden and unstoppable. "She's perfection itself," he murmured, his voice a tender whisper as he reached out to graze the baby's delicate hand with a trembling finger. "Just like her mother," Willa replied, her smile faint but warm with exhaustion. "She's got your hair, poor little thing. And I'd bet my heart she's inherited your fire." Lucas chuckled softly, settling with care on the bed's edge. "Thank you, Willa, for this gift, for everything." Time wove its gentle thread, and as Sarah blossomed from a fragile infant into a spirited toddler, the Double R Ranch flourished under the couple's steadfast hands. Lucas brought on 2 new ranch hands to tend the growing herd, while Pedro, now elevated to foreman, took pride in guiding them with his seasoned wisdom. Willa, ever the heart of their home, wielded her grace like a quiet force, nurturing both Sarah and the sprawling duties of a rancher's wife with unwavering devotion. That autumn, news drifted in. James Walton had sold his stake in Copper Creek to Franklin Harrive and set his sights on California. Willa felt no pang of sorrow, only a faint recognition that her refusal of him had paved the path to her true joy. On Sarah's first birthday, laughter and warmth filled the Double R as kin and neighbors gathered. Amid the celebration, Willa stole away to the porch, gazing at the sunset's fiery hues spilling across the horizon. Lucas soon joined her, his arm encircling her waist in a familiar, grounding embrace. They stood in a hush, wrapped in shared stillness. "A penny for your musings," he finally ventured. Willa leaned into him, her voice soft. "I was remembering that day at the train depot. How near I came to stepping onto that eastbound train. What would our lives be now if I had?" Lucas's reply held a quiet, unshakable resolve. "I'd have followed you. Maybe not that very day, but in time. Once I knew you, Willa, letting you slip away was never an option." She turned in his arms, her eyes searching his. "You never told me that before. How could such a simple truth carry so much weight?" Lucas gave a subtle shrug, a familiar sign of his quiet embarrassment, one she had learned to decipher over the years. "It never felt like the right moment to confess that I was utterly captivated from the very first glance," he admitted softly. "I couldn't bear the thought of you believing I'd somehow taken advantage of the situation." Willis let out a tender sigh, her voice laced with affectionate frustration. "After all these years, Lucas, can you truly not see it? I fell for you just as swiftly. By the time you knelt at Founder's Day, my heart was already whispering for that moment, hoping, praying you'd ask." His smile unfurled, slow and warm, like a sunrise. "I hoped too, but I wasn't sure. You've always been a mystery to unravel, Mrs. Reed." "Then let me make it crystal now," Willis replied, stretching onto her tiptoes to press a gentle kiss to his lips. "I love you. I cherish every single day we share, and I've never once regretted saying yes not to either of your proposals." Inside, Sarah's bright laughter wove through the hum of celebration and soft melodies. Outside, the Arizona sky deepened to a velvet blue, the first stars winking awake. There on the porch of the home they'd crafted with their own hands, Lucas and Willis Reed shared a kiss, a tender echo of their surprising start and a vow of the boundless future ahead. What a journey it had been, from the sting of rejection to this radiant joy. To all of you who've joined us in this heartfelt tale, thank you from the depths of our souls for watching. Your presence means the world to us. Please share your thoughts in the comments, tap that like button, spread this story to others, and consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that touch the heart. Together, let's keep this journey alive.